my father is an engineer, and my mother actually is a social worker. So I then became a psychologist, which seems to have combined both the caring aspect of it as well as the desire to be a little bit more research-based. And so, to introduce my father at a conference that I'm organizing is an interesting position to be in. My father's an engineer. Recently, although maybe not so recently, retired. Lifelong dealing with this problem of science and religion, and is going to take us onto somewhat of a journey, theoretical but not so theoretical, on human evolution and perhaps the next iteration of that, artificial intelligence, and see where we're going with that.
All right, the first slide, we're going to talk about technology, religion, and in a sense, evolution. But the first slide is, my wife and I visited a sculpture garden this summer in New York State called Storm King Mountain. And this is, it's all outdoors. It's an enormous sculpture. The scale is up to probably the first piece is the size of a human being. And it's created by a Jewish sculptor, and it's got a fascinating name. The name the sculptor gave this sculpture is called Adonai. So in case you've never seen God, this is as close as you're going to get to it. In terms of the talk, we're going to talk about man. And what's happening to artificial intelligence, and the idea of life having a purpose, and religion, and then, as Yogi Berra once said very perceptively, the future ain't what it used to be. But technology is moving at an ever-increasing pace and changing very, very rapidly. And at times we can no longer understand it and really control the computer codes we are creating. In Robert Bella's book, Religion and Human Evolution, he describes the next great extinction on the planet. But he attributes this to a biology cause. That is, that humans on Earth, and we've changed the agriculture, we've changed the way we handle the planet. And agriculture, for him, represented the most profound ecological impact and change in the history of the planet. But what Bella does not realize is that the growth of technology has probably had a larger impact. And he looks for comparative religion for spiritual, proactive, and dealing with the ultimate questions. But what if the masses, the people, have decided to look to robots, artificial intelligence, and computer code to provide the meaning and power that they seek? As a trivial example, we consider the daily paragraphs we read at the Shema every day. Our engineering now allows us to ignore the wrath of God, and with this desalination, as it is here in Israel, we can provide enough water for the state of Israel. So it's fascinating. So with these many questions, why worship God if these technologies can make us a better people, and even if they are as mysterious as God? And a very tough question, is religion coming to its evolutionary end? And in partial answer, yes, God is a product of human imagination, but in turn, human imagination is a product of biochemical algorithms. And so while I would try to provide some interesting answers to these questions, I will leave you mostly with questions. First, to look at technology and robots and artificial intelligence. The evolution of technology is growing very quickly, and it's evolving very quick. There was an interesting article in a recent New York Times Magazine section on what Google is doing for writing code. People no longer write their code. Computers write their own code. And they evolve, just like the planet has evolved, just like humans have evolved. The code has evolved. And by and large, the people who monitor the progress really don't understand what the code is doing. It's mysterious, and it's mysterious as God. It is what we call dark code. Our DNA in the human beings has fragments that we don't understand what they do. Nobody clips them away, but we don't understand what they do. When I go to shul on a weekday morning and I watch people have their sidurs on their iPads or on their iPhones and they pray with it, if you step back very far, and I've asked my rabbi this, when you step back far, does it look like they're praying with the machine or to the machine? And it's kind of terrifying to me. And do we liken all of that to God? So we call it dark code, and we don't understand what it's doing. There's been a movement in the world called transhumanism for many years, and it is now coming to the fore. What's happening is that we are enhancing human and intellectual and psychological capabilities very quickly. A definition of transhumanism has been, life up to now has been nasty, brutal, and short, but now we can change the species as a whole with biochemical engineering. Jacques Ellul, writing in a book called The Technological Society many years ago, asked a great question. Why promise us, the human species, clean streets when we can manipulate the human biochemistry and make us think we have clean streets without actually cleaning the streets? Humans are seeking bliss and immortality and are going to turn themselves into gods through biological engineering, cyborg engineering, and the engineering of non-organic creatures, that is, the robots. Are we doing it now? In many ways we are. We have self-driving vehicles coming to the fore everywhere. But what's fascinating about the new Tesla cars that are coming along, if a given Tesla car, self-driving, goes down a street, say past here, the Schechter Institute, it learns that street. Every Tesla car on the planet will know those streets. They don't have to drive it, so the next Tesla comes by, will know what's going on that street. So it's learning all by itself. It's passing on the information in a genetic kind of way. We have genetically modified organisms. In GMOs, some people hate it, some people love it, but we are doing it. There is an IBM computer called Watson, which appeared on Jeopardy program and is doing great work medically. Watson is working with a neurological institute in Arizona, and along the way they fed all of the literature, and literally all of the literature on ALS, or what is known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and discovered when Watson digested all that information, came up with a similarity of 5 genes that the biochemists, the neurological scientists never saw before. So it actually identified genetic changes that nobody ever knew, similar across the material. What's a little bit nerve-wracking, I guess, when we talk about artificial intelligence, is who can control it. And who will do that. But people think about computer consciousness. Most of the people working in AI today ignore consciousness. That's not an issue anymore. What they're working for is to get very, very smart computers. And then we won't need computer consciousness. So why worship God if these technologies can make us better people, even as they are mysterious of God? What Elon Musk, again, the founder of Tesla, has come along and said, it's not that the computers will come along with a will of its own, but rather who will control those computers. And that becomes an ultimate issue. And there are many movies out there today that show this information, that show that the standoffs between humans and computers, and often the computers win, unfortunately. So now we look at the second piece of the presentation, the religion aspect of evolution. A little history of the axial age. Between 800 BCE and 200 BCE, religion flourished and grew and essentially populated the planet. Examples abound: Confucius, the Indian stuff, the Old Testament planets, Homer and Plato. They came across the planet, okay, and have controlled the planet in some ways, intellectually and philosophically, for over 2,000 years. And so the question is, what's going to be happening? What's happening now? And in the United States, there's an organization called the Pew Research Center, which some of you have seen this data, but it's fascinating all by itself. What are Jewish trends in the United States by generation? The early generation, what is known as the greatest generation, the Jews by religion, 93%, Jews of no religion, 7%. If we go down the line for the younger generations, the millennials born after 1980, the numbers have decreased dramatically. People are not identifying as Jewish anymore, and they're simply Jews of no religion. They're becoming secular, they're becoming not observant. If I look at the life expectancy of somebody born in 1980, life expectancy of about 75 to 80 years, that will come out around the year 2055, 2060, something like that. And that's what Ray Kurzweil, who invented many things, has called when the singularity will occur, when the computers will be as smart or smarter than people. Other data of interest in terms of Jewish denominational data, and this data is again well known, but what's happening basically is that the Jewish population is moving to the left and essentially falling off. 20% of Jews raised reform have left the ranks of Jewry completely. So people are moving to the left and falling off. When I looked at this data and I said, well, that's not enough. What's happening, again, this is what Pew has found for Christian data in the United States. And in the year 2010, the projected Christian population in the United States was about close to 80%, and the unaffiliated population was 16%. If they look at their projections based on the data that they have gathered, the projected Christian population will drop to 66% by 2050, again, the time of the singularity, and the projected unaffiliated population will grow to 25%. So again, not only the Jews, but the Christians are also falling off and not observing anymore. And this is a fascinating combination, okay? Now, it is also happening in Europe. I don't have the data for that, but the data is the same in Europe as well. One of the questions that comes up from an operational point of view, what are the drivers for these trends? Well, some of them are obvious. World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, the atomic age, all of these are drivers and are driving people away from religion, it seems to me. More drivers. The establishment of the State of Israel, which is totally, economically, in some ways, very much dependent on the computer generation. The liberalization of the American democracy and the concomitant secularization, Israeli secularization, and the pace of technological change. And the overarching piece for all of these drivers seems to me technological change. We're pushing the envelope technologically, and it's moving very rapidly. Religion up to a point has been a deal which is coming to an end, whereas spirituality is a journey, and that spirituality perhaps can be made by the computers. What's next? Are we trading meaning, which comes from religion, for power with the robots or with the artificial intelligence? Are we coming to the end of the axial age, which has lasted over 2,000 years? Is religion coming to an evolutionary end? This is a very hard question. I sat with the rabbi of my synagogue at length about this question, and he worries about it as well. He sees it, and I see it, and I feel it. And then the question comes up, is a new axial age beginning? This one based on technology with the artificial intelligence and the robots coming along. And will people be ready to leave behind the superstitions and inhibitions of the past and face a brave new real world of artificial intelligence? Do we even need a religion in this age of robotics? No easy answers to these questions. Current trends in the religious world suggest that more and more individuals are leaving the fold. They are joining the ranks of the unaffiliated with no identification with a given sect or god, as he or she is commonly understood. New techno religions may conquer the world by promising salvation through algorithms and genes without the need for the trappings of ritual. It may well be that religion is really reaching its evolutionary end, and using the language of Bellow again, we may be entering a new axial age with the dominant species as robots. In the early 21st century, and this is a quote from a man named Yuval Harari, who has written a fascinating book. He's an Israeli at Hebrew University. He's written two books, actually. One is a wonderful history of the human species, called Homo sapiens, but his latest book is called Homo Deus, which is a kind of a scary title, Homo Deus, and he subtitles it The History of the Future, which is also a little bit fascinating. In the early 21st century, the train of progress is again pulling out of the station, and this will probably be the last train ever to leave the station, called Homo sapiens. Those who miss this train will never get a second chance. In order to get a seat, you will need to understand 21st century technology and the powers of biotechnology and computer algorithms. In the 21st century, those who ride this train of progress will acquire divine abilities of creation and destruction, while those left behind will likely face extinction. And yes, God is a product of human imagination, but in turn, as I said earlier, human imagination is a product of biochemical algorithms. Let me close again with two quotes. One from Rabbi Lord Sachs, the former chief rabbi of London, who says that evolution that tells us that God, having created the conditions for life, transcends life as he or she transcends the universe. The idea that we should look for God in nature is essentially pagan. Faith says all that breathes praises God. It does not say that all that breathes proves the existence of God. And that's wonderful that Sachs says that, but let me put that opposite to, again, something that Harari has said. According to the new religion, human experiences are not sacred, and Homo sapiens is not the apex of creation, but perhaps a precursor of some future Homo Deus. Humans are merely tools for creating the Internet of all things, which may eventually spread out from the planet Earth to cover the whole galaxy and even the whole universe. It would be very much like God itself. Fascinating. I close with a wonderful picture that we probably all know from the Sistine Chapel, slightly modified. But in this case, who's touching who? So I thank you for your attention. I'll take any questions. David?
Herb, that was fascinating. First of all, our reaction to the sculpture that you showed at the beginning of your lecture, which is titled Adonai. In the Sarajevo Haggadah, there's a section of illuminations at the end, and one of them pictures an old man sitting on a bench, a very distinguished looking gentleman sitting on a bench with a long white beard, and nobody knows what it's doing there. One of the theories is that it's a picture of God.
Thank you, David.
So it could be that the artist's attempt to draw God predates your sculpture 500-600 years. More seriously, the statistics you showed from the Pew Report are certainly distressing to anyone engaged in Jewish education, Jewish identity, rabbis. My question is, how can you isolate the effect of technology? Jews leaving Judaism and converting to other religions or having no religion did not start with technology in the late 20th century. Heinrich Heine converted to Christianity in the 1820s. In Germany before the Holocaust, there was a huge percentage of Jews who were either totally secular or Christian. And you can do the same study in all of the Western European countries, Eastern European countries, and so on and so forth. So while it is true that more and more Jews in the Western world are becoming secular or would define themselves as having no religion, it's not clear to me how that is connected to technology and robots and all of the other amazing inventions that we've come up with.
That's a fair question. I mean, when I first did this, Paul has taught me something about statistics over the years. Correlation does not mean causation, and he's right. But over the course of the last century or so, technology has changed and impacted our lives enormously. And the question is that what's driving it? David, I don't know. I know it's there, it's pervasive. What we used to talk about, artificial intelligence, was always in the future, coming. And now it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it terrifies me. I used to be a technological optimist, that we could solve all kinds of technological problems this way, but I don't know where we can do that anymore. There was a fascinating movie that I made Paul watch the other night called Ex Machina, and it's a story about a robot. But they ask all the right questions, and one of the questions that the robot asks the man who's interviewing her, if I pass all your tests and I prove that I'm as good as a human being, are you going to turn me off? And one of Paul's brothers is a computer geek. He's a computer kid in the family, and he says, "Is that likened to murder?" And I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. And I don't know what we do about that when robots are so pervasive. And I can't blame it at all on technology, but it's certainly pervasive in all that we do. We go to a restaurant here, I mean, just the other day. Everybody's out there with their phones in their hands. Why are we doing that? I mean, it's a little bit much for me, and I don't have a good answer to that question. But we're going to find out. I mean, I asked my rabbi that question, and Paul's younger brother is, as you know, is a rabbi. What are you guys going to do about all this? He said, well, I'm going to still pray the way I always do. It's not going to change me. Well, what about your children? And there's not a good answer to that. Okay? I don't think there is a good answer to it. I think, Paul?
One of the questions on the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children is, what are some of the pitfalls of the fast-paced changes in science and technology? Okay, so, the answer that isn't written in the book is because we haven't been able to teach them the moral means that we all have. Right? So, can you respond to that?
It depends who creates the robot. I mean, it depends who makes the artificial intelligence, who writes the code. But if the code writes itself like Google is doing, I don't know who's going to answer that question. I mean, when I read that Google, and Google learned it by doing translation. It's weird that translation became the vehicle for them to become an AI company, not the search company. And so the computer's writing its own code, and it's learning the way children do, by trial and error, which sounds to me like evolution. They try this, it works. They try this, something else that doesn't work, so they throw that away because it doesn't survive the test. I don't know where that comes from. No good answer. Unfortunately, no good answer to some of these questions yet. Joe?
A good chunk of religion has to do with what are called these ultimate questions. Why am I here? What is the purpose of my existence? How should I live? I don't see how computers change any of that.
Well, one of the interesting features, when we have these artificial intelligence robots, which are so smart, humans will lose their economic and military usefulness. Intelligence is becoming decoupled from consciousness. The system run by the robots will still value humans collectively, but not in unique individuals. The system will find values in some unique individuals, but these will be a new elite with upgraded superhuman abilities. And the humans will be menials. And maybe they won't care about the robots. Somebody gave me an example. If you consider the ants and the dogs and people as hierarchy, the ants don't care about us. They go on their merry way. They scurry around, they do their thing. And dogs, or feral dogs in any case, they scurry around and do their thing. And they don't care about the ants. By and large, they don't care about the humans. And the humans, maybe when the next generation of artificial intelligence comes along, we won't care about the robots. But in the end, we will ultimately die out because there'll be no way to promote us, to procreate, because the robots will take over. There was an interesting book written by a physicist called The Physics of Immortality, by a physicist named Frank Tipler. And I read the book, I said, well, how are you going to do that? And what he said, the way we're going to populate the universe is we're going to create robots. We're going to create a robot, we're going to send it out, it's going to land on a planet, it will create a new robot, it'll create another robot, it'll move out to the next planet, and so on, it'll populate the universe. We don't need humans in that case. We don't need that at all. We may not be, we will become superfluous. I hate to say that to humans sitting in the room, but we become superfluous.
Well, then maybe the computers will have to come up with their own religion in order
yes, absolutely right.
to provide them with a reason.
Maybe, but the answer to that question, I don't know. Tom?
Following on the last question, and I work with a colleague back in the States who's very interested in transhumanism and all this stuff. And I asked her a question I'll ask everyone here. Do we envision a time when, if robots get to this point where they're super intelligent and whatnot, and if they even ask these questions of purpose, could we ever see ourselves trying a robot for a crime of passion?
Well,
And the reason I'm saying that is because we may be ourselves some type of bio-robot, but we have a cognitive and an affective system. And it seems to me that robots right now are purely cognitive.
Well, the classic question now going on with the self-driving cars, who is the self-driving car going to protect? The passenger in the car or the person on the street? And let's assume it's going to protect the person on the street, in the car, and he runs over the person on the street. Do you prosecute that robot? I don't know. It's an impossible question, and it makes my hair hurt, that question. Jack?
Historically, there's been the dichotomy between faith and reason, I guess St. Augustine and others. And now you're saying the dichotomy might be between faith and technology. Mm-hmm. And some of the figures you showed from the Pew survey, which sort of showed maybe you're going away from faith. On the other hand, Steve Cohen has had an article in the Forward recently, which says the grandparents' generation was only a very tiny percentage Orthodox.
Right.
The mid-generation was much more larger percent, and this younger generation a much larger percent.
Yes.
That, I think, sort of is illustrative of the faith technology, and I wonder if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I think, I know Steve Cohen's name worked very well. And the question is, that move to the right was fascinating, or the growth move to the right. I don't think that's sustainable over the next 100 years. I think that the Pew data is really unmistakable to me in the trend, because it's not only the Jews, it's everybody else as well. And I don't think it's sustainable.
Richard Sosis would disagree with you, the anthropologist, who would say that because the Orthodox are requiring their people to do more,
And to have more children.
they're actually they're gonna, that's more sustainable than the groups that
Yeah.
don't require as many religious practices.
There was a question back there, it's gone away. Yes.
Yes, thanks for your provocative presentation. What about this issue of like unintended consequences? And I'm just going to mention, I mean, I teach architecture, and 50 years ago, students all wanted to learn how to use the computer for drawing. Now they're required to do that, but now they all want to learn how to draw by hand. Because nobody can draw by hand anymore. And there is an art and a quality to the hand drawing that the computer drawings, which are very realistic, just don't have. And so I just wonder to what extent, surely we depend on technology for all kinds of things and we're addicted to it, but also to what extent we will start valuing things that we took for granted before, simply because it's becoming more rare.
There was a trend in the United States to go back to cursive writing.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the unintended consequences. We lost it. To this day, my wife, who is sitting here, she takes out the letters I used to send her from college and can't read them. Okay, my handwriting was impossible, and it still is impossible. Okay, thank God for the computer, and I can put things, in that way. When I was teaching for many, many years, I would walk into the classroom, and the students would know that my handwriting was terrible on a blackboard, and I would tell them, please interrupt me anytime you can't read something I put on the blackboard. Because I used to write equation after equation. But still, there are unintended consequences, and we will face them, I think, as this stuff grows on us, as it comes around. I mean, the buildings you describe, in the magazines I still read, they talk about buildings monitoring themselves, right? I mean, all the electronics on the buildings, on the environmental systems, and lighting and so on. Yeah. It's all done by themselves, not us.
But, I just want to say, there's the hype about technology and there's the reality about technology.
Yes.
So, sure, buildings can monitor themselves, but they also break down. Right?
Right.
And there was a period, as many of you have experienced, where buildings did not have operable windows.
Yes.
And that was actually because lawyers decided that people might throw themselves out the window. And then engineers devised these systems where, and now of course everybody would be out of their mind if they didn't have an operable window, because you have all these toxic chemicals that nobody envisioned, was going to happen. So I think that there's, this question about the unintended consequences and how we discover. We try things out, it sounds like a real solution for a common problem, and then it turns creating other problems we don't anticipate.
Yes, for every problem there's an opportunity, and for every opportunity there's a problem. I mean, we create our own problems. You're absolutely right. Yes?
The question is whether all of this is imitation biology or some other category that we have identified.
Ask it again, Rick.
Could we say that what you're talking about is imitation biology, not just another category that we
Yeah, okay, that's good. I like that. That's very good. It is imitation biology. But without consciousness, the robots will not have consciousness, at least in the beginning, will not have consciousness. So I don't know that.
Well, so we start with you talked about consciousness, and we start, again, I remember reading Yuval Noah Harari's book and saying, oh, there's no answer to to the problem that you're going to present of
Right.
consciousness. And it may just be a problem, or maybe something deeper, and we don't, but that's always been the basis of religion. Is
Yes, yes.
is the, or I don't know, a goof nefesh, the mind consciousness sort of separation. But then you have robots, but then you have the evolutionary approach to biology, which is sort of built around our development as sentient beings and our perception of the world and of our environment. But robots don't have that either. In other words, there's no, I mean, we're just limited by our own senses or our own sense perception in terms of our relationship with the world around us, but robots don't have that limitation whatsoever. So, you're sort of eliminating the problem. In other words, the consciousness, that's a problem to solve, and
Right.
also the limitations of our senses is the problem.
I mean, I always thought that consciousness was a big issue, but Harari dismisses it. I mean, he just throws it away. Oh, I don't need consciousness. I mean, I don't know why, but maybe we don't. If I have a really smart robot, maybe I don't need consciousness.
Boring.
Don't know. And in this stage of this presentation is a lot of I don't knows attached to it. Okay, as opposed to I wish I knew the answer. I don't know the answers to this stuff.
I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question. It's a fact that Jews can learn anything about Judaism by computer. You can learn Talmud, you can learn Halakha, you can learn all about prayer, you can learn how to make a talit, you can learn how to read Torah, everything by computer. But you can't learn the spirit of the law by computer yet.
Yet.
And I don't think, I hope that robots won't be taking over all Jewish educators, rabbis, cantors. Parents are included in that. But I think that all of us, parents, rabbis, cantors, teachers, all have to have the computer savvy to work together with the links to provide our children and our grandchildren, that we together will bring the spirit of the law, because on Shabbat, when you can't use that computer, and you hope that you're conveying that, that on Shabbat, that they will listen, the children will listen and will learn the spirit of the law from shul home.
People used
Yes.
to go into shop because they couldn't smoke on Shabbat.
Thank you very
I
much.
want to ask a question, right? Who in the room thinks that they're conscious? Right?
Well, there's a psychology question. Go ahead.
Who in the room thinks that they're conscious? How many of you have pets? Right? Who thinks that their pets are conscious? Right?
They're sentient beings.
Right? Sentient beings for sure. Right? Maybe none of us are conscious. Maybe it's just this sense, because somewhere between Dan Dennett and Sam Harris talking about consciousness emerging, and that we just think we're conscious because of this creation of our brain. That our brain makes us feel like we're conscious, and we certainly think our animals are conscious. I wish we could ask them. I could ask my dog. Well, I won't ask you what I would ask her these days. But we would ask our pets, are they conscious? Right? So this artificial intelligence, the way I see it, is that the question of consciousness is really irrelevant, because it'll either emerge or it'll be that the computers are conscious and say, those humans, they think they're conscious. But it doesn't really matter. And then the question of the meaning or all of that will come up.
Maybe what's important is not whether they have consciousness, but whether they have conscience.
Right, and they're going to have to, because they're going to have to decide how to drive the car, how to land the plane, and how to barbecue the steak.